evening and welcome to the program News and Discussion on Power TV and Radio. My name is Watson Johnson. I am your presenter and producer. Today is Tuesday, the 6th of October 2015. My guest on the show tonight is Ambassador Nathaniel Barnes. As you may be aware, Nathaniel Barnes has joined the NDC. He says the NDC, they have the same ideology, goals, and objectives. And, that's the reason why he's crossed over to the NDC. He's our guest tonight. We're going to look at that and other critical national issues. Ambassador Barnes, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Watson. It's very good to be here.
Now, you've made it clear that although your party was deregistered, the Liberian Destiny political party was deregistered and don't want to form another political party, you've decided to join the NDC. Let's talk more about that.
Well, yeah, there is a proliferation of parties. For such a small country, I think in a relatively small, comparatively small voter base, I think we have way too many parties. Of course, people have a right to form political parties. They're part of the constitutional right. But I still do believe there are just too many. So as opposed to establishing a new one or going through the process of appealing to the neck to have my party reinstated, I think I just find another institution whose philosophical bent was similar to mine and pursue membership within that institution.
But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't give you the earphone. Okay, now you talk about, the goals, objectives, ideology are compatible with the vision, with your vision for Liberia.
Yeah.
What is your vision for Liberia?
Well, it's very simple. My vision can be explained in one simple word. Empowerment.
Empowerment. I've been following you on Facebook, everywhere you went, that keyword, empowerment.
Yeah, it absolutely is important. We need to empower people, not only economically and financially, but politically and socially, so that they feel that they are convinced, and they are an integral part in the decision-making process, in the initiative of their destiny. So it's very, very important that people are empowered everywhere. Liberians are empowered in every aspect, cover the entire spectrum of our society.
So if you were to be elected president of the Republic of Liberia, how will you go about empowering Liberians?
Well, let's start first and foremost with economic empowerment. I find it quite ironic and rather cynical that our legislature recently passed an act that specifically sets aside 25% of all government contracts for Liberian-owned businesses. And they are celebrating and feeling very good about themselves for doing that. I think it's absurd. It should be the other way around.
How could be the other way around?
75% for Liberians.
But that's a starting point.
No, but a starting point should be giving Liberians the edge. Okay, of course, one could argue why there aren't Liberians that can do this.
So that is not empowerment.
Therein lies the issue of a starting point. Okay, yes, there are weaknesses within the Liberian business sector in terms of accountancy, record keeping, and all of that, and capacities and all that. But we have to empower them to become better. We have to set aside when contracts are made. Well, 25% is nice, but to me, I think it's absurd. For too long now, our economic destiny, our economic future, our economic well-being has been in the hands of foreigners. It's never been in the hands of Liberians. It's time to start. We must empower Liberian businesses to be able to do this. Capacity in Liberia is not lacking. Okay, in terms of the wherewithal and the need and the knowledge to do this. Okay, what's lacking is courage to allow people to do it. Okay, I'm not saying that there won't be mistakes, don't get me wrong. Okay, but we need to have more confidence in ourselves that we can do this. Okay, that's a clear first example. The second example is we must empower people politically. Appointing local governing leaders at the local level doesn't make sense to me. Okay, we shouldn't be appointing paramount chiefs, for example.
You think they should be elected?
Absolutely. Of course, the argument is, well, the election of that is costly, and we may not be able to afford it. But I have another suggestion. That could be very true that we don't have the funding or the resources to fund the election of paramount chiefs in every location or every district. Why don't we allow the citizens to submit a list of 4 or 5 of their peers or their individuals after they've met and made some decision? Okay, among all of us, these are 4 or 5 of our leaders that we would like to, that could lead us effectively, and then have the executive branch of government make their do appropriate due diligence and make the appointment of one of those 4 or 5. At least people are having a say in who their leader at the local level would be. Because if they don't have a say, then they feel that they don't have, that person or individual is not accountable to them. And leaders are servants of the people. Leaders are accountable to the people. So those kinds of things, we have to empower people. But in order to empower people, requires the courage to do it, okay? And then the confidence in ourselves. Belief in ourselves that we can do it, and we can do it.
Over the years, our economy has been in the hands of foreigners. This government posted about, building the middle income class.
Where is it?
You don't see that happening?
No.
How can we change that?
I think the middle class of Liberia of Liberia right now, it's outside of Liberia. The middle class of Liberia is the diaspora. And when I was ambassador to the U.S., I coined this expression that the diaspora represents 2 important characteristics for Liberia. Politically, they embody Liberia's 16th county. Economically, they're Liberia's middle class. Last year, remittances to Liberia from the diaspora exceeded $200 million, $250 million. That's a lot of money. It's a good chunk of even our national budget, okay? So therein lies our middle class, okay? But we need to build. We need to see Liberian millionaires. We need to see successful Liberian entrepreneurs. And it's possible. They can do it.
What do you think this government is now doing that when you are elected president you do?
Empowering
you talk about empowerment.
Empowering people, okay? When we award contracts, we need to look at the capacity of Liberians. Yes, they have limitations. Don't get me wrong. I'm not blind enough to say no, they don't. But they do. Okay, but we need to build a certain amount of confidence and support of Liberian businesses. Personally, I'm a Liberian businessman. Okay, things were difficult economically in the first place, but then the Ebola crisis came and wiped out many Liberian businesses. Okay, but we need to have confidence that they can do it. Okay, encourage them to do it by giving them preference. Every other country in the world does that. So why do we create millionaires that are non-Liberians in our private sector and not give Liberians out?
Come out openly to say they want to be president, but they've announced that they want to reduce poverty in Liberia. Is that part of the vision?
Poverty can be reduced when you empower people.
Okay.
Okay. Look, the fundamental problem here is this. I've been going to various communities and been invited by various groups to talk. Yes, I'm a politician. Okay, and what I say to them, I said, I'm going to tell you a lot of things within the next 30 minutes or an hour that I'm allowed to speak. If you don't remember anything I'd say, that's only one, that's fine, but I just want you to remember one thing. No. What I want you to remember is you have power. Now, unfortunately, many of us, power have been taken away from you. Okay? But don't forget that you have power. You can do 3 things with your power. You can have it taken away from you, as it has been over the generations. You can abuse it, or you can use it for your own, fulfilling your own destiny. Now is the time to realize that you have power. Don't let anybody fool you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But you have power. And that's what I say to them. And I say to them, at this point in time, as I engage you, as I talk to you, these young people and other people in the community,
how can they make use of this power?
I say to them, in terms of electing and selecting your leaders, ask 2 basic questions. Number 1, what has this person done? What is their track record? How have they delivered? What kind of character have they exhibited? How have they lived among us, the people? Question number one, what have they done? And question number two, can they deliver? Do they have what it takes to deliver what it needs, what Liberia needs to lift all of us up? And that's what I say to them. You need to do that, okay? But I was telling you, some time ago I did an experiment. I was sitting in my office and I decided, I wonder what it's like to live in Monrovia without a vehicle. Every morning I'm driving to, going to work, and I'm sitting in a car and I see my fellow citizens along the street catching a hard time trying to get a means to get to work or to school or whatever. And I said, I wonder what it's like. So I said, okay. My office is on Benson Street, so I got up and I walked from where I work to Broad Street near B.W. Harris School. There's an MTA bus stop. I got on the bus. I paid my $15 Liberian and I got on the bus. I boarded the bus. And I rode the bus from Broad Street to Red Light, go by Chop Market. And then turned around and went from Red Light to Kunga Town to where the Lone Star office is. And I got down there. And throughout that experience, it was very, very dynamic and very interesting because people were getting on and off the bus, and the lecturing was not easy. You know, the Liberian form of lecturing. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of talk. And I was absolutely amazed because when I got down from the bus and started to walk home, I realized one very important thing. Liberians understand the dynamics and the challenges that they live in. They understand it. They certainly articulate it very, very well, you see. But then I asked myself the question, if they understand it so well, as it was clear to me that they did, why do they keep making the same poor choices over and over and over again in terms of elected leadership? Okay, and I've been sort of racking my brain and thinking about it. I think I have some of the answers. One is the issue of poverty. When a person is poor and as destitute and as desperately
you think you have no choice.
Right. You don't think about what's going to happen tomorrow or what value this person brings for my future or my children's future. You think about, well, if he's going to offer me a bag of rice or if he's going to offer me $20, you know, that will do. Okay? But
now,
we need to change that.
Okay.
People need to understand that needs to change.
Now let's focus our attention. Maybe we could still talk about, you know, you joining the NDC or your vision for Liberia. This Mo Ibrahim Index, you know, has rated Liberia, you know, as scoring high in the area of good governance. Good governance. What's your take on that?
You know, to me is, well, how do you measure good governance? When in governance, it's like a multifaceted approach. There are many aspects, many different perspectives and perceptions, how people look at you. In my definition, what good governance should be is how the government has reacted to the needs of the everyday folks.
Let me stop you there. It's been strengthened by performance and safety and rule of law, sustainable economic opportunity and human development.
Well, I guess you need to ask the guy in West Point or the guy in Campley or the guy in Jiretabo.
Is it far from the reality?
I think those places I pointed out just now, yes it is. Okay? The fact of the matter is, if we have not improved the livelihood of some guy in a remote part of Liberia, as a matter of fact, in some slum community here in Monrovia, it doesn't matter what the Mo Ibrahim Index or the World Bank Index or the IMF Index or whatever index is. We should have our own parameters as to how we are impacting the well-being of our people. The other day, a friend of mine took her sick father to the GFK hospital. Gentleman, of course, he's up there in age, and he was quite sick. Only got there to find there was no oxygen in the hospital. And she came and she told me, and I just sat there and shook my head. And of course, the desperateness or the hopelessness of the situation struck me, because I thought, well, there's no oxygen in the hospital, the facility that's supposed to be the epicenter of our healthcare delivery system. in our country. There is no oxygen. However, there is one individual here who works in government, the CEO of NOCAL, who makes nearly as much money as the President of the United States of America, $360,000. How is it that one person can make $360,000 a year and we don't have oxygen in our hospital? If we took that salary and cut it in half, that 50% should be enough to buy enough oxygen to supply every hospital in Liberia. Okay, so what I'm trying to say to you is those indexes are nice. They are good, feel-good things that make us try to keep us focused at a certain level. But we need to create our own indicators as to the impact that we are having on reducing poverty, on empowering people, on making our citizens better.
Talking about NUCAL, what do you make of the bankruptcy? NUCAL has gone broke, and the president has taken responsibility for that.
Well, that's wonderful. It's good because, you know, at the end of the day, the buck does stop there. And it's nice that she's stepped up to the plate and says, it's my responsibility. But that still doesn't change the fact that a lot of misdeeds were done there. Okay?
Do you think what happened?
Mismanagement. Mismanagement. Look, you know, every company has policies, procedures, operating procedures. When you move away from those, or you remove controls, then what happened? Okay? Why you pay people the kind of money you did? When the oil company really had a line on its the left side of the balance sheet, which was cash, which was payment for signing bonuses and all of these other things, but they had very little assets. There weren't any producing wells or anything like that, and it was all petered away, mismanaged. So it's a matter of poor management and a lack of oversight.
Mismanagement, poor management, lack of oversight. Yes, the president is saying that those who have been retired should be given the severance benefits.
In my opinion, they should not have been getting anything.
Why?
They didn't deserve it. You pay people bonuses and severance packages when they've delivered and done well for the company.
How would you describe yourself as leadership?
How would I describe?
On the part of the president.
Well, you know, in all fairness, okay, heavy is the head that bears the crown, okay? And this very Liberia, this country of ours, Liberia, it's a difficult place to manage. Don't get me wrong, it's not an easy job, okay? And I like to think that what has happened over the last 12 years of our political, economic existence, it's really been a transition. This has been the real, true transitional government. Now, it happened to have been Mrs. Sirleaf who took over the control, the helm of our power of our government 10 years ago. It would have been a challenge for anyone. I, after the first round, endorsed Mrs. Sirleaf because I thought she was the better of the two choices. And in all fairness, it would have been a tough job no matter what. First and foremost, expectations were unreasonably high.
What do you mean you thought you would have been better?
Huh?
What do you mean you thought you would have been better?
Well, there were two candidates, okay, Mrs. Sirleaf and Mr. Weir.
Has she let you down?
In my own personal opinion.
Has she let you down?
Well, it's a hard question to answer because the reality of it is the challenges were such that it would have been difficult to be resoundingly successful. High expectations, difficult challenges, the issue of corruption. Now, if there is any form of disappointment, I think the absence of courage, just being tough and saying enough, that's probably where my disappointment lies. You know, you can't do this and have friends. You can't do this and have a social group that, you know, you will treat with a little differently than everyone else. You got to literally have a heart of steel, okay? Because when you're trying to do something like what we're trying to do, for example, address the issue of corruption, you know, no prisoners.
Will you have a steel heart when you let the president?
I certainly will. And we were chatting, and I said, you know, I know you pray for me, Mom. You pray for me all the time. I know it. And I said, I know you want me to be successful, and you want me to eventually, God willing, lead Liberia. I said, but you know something, Mom? And I know should this happen, God willing, you want to come to Liberia and live there. I said, but you know what? When you do come there, whatever you do, don't do anything wrong.
You told your mom that?
I told my mother that. I said, because if you do something wrong, and it's clearly through a process of jurisprudence, the law shows that the process shows that you broke the law, you will pay the consequences. I said this to my mother, and I'm saying to you, I mean it. Look, this country, yeah, there are capacity issues that we have, but we do have a certain level of technical skills and technical competencies, okay, in our leadership. What we lack in the leadership is courage.
Courage.
The courage to just say, enough. Enough of this. We're not going to do this anymore. Okay?
The president who has vision for his country.
Yeah, you have that vision, but you have the courage. You have to have the courage
Innovation.
to ensure that that vision is accomplished.
Okay, now, we just talked about this Mo Ibrahim Index, but on the 17th of September, the United Nations Security Council issued a resolution. And just to read quickly, several concerns were raised. It talks about the government prioritizing national reconciliation and economic recovery to combat corruption and to promote efficiency and good governance, in particular by continuing to strengthen transparency and accountability, including by managing effectively Liberia's natural resources. Now, on the 17th, since passed now on the 5th October, the Mo Ibrahim report is saying this government has done well in terms of good governance, strengthening the rule of law, sustainable economic opportunity, and human development.
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. These reports are nice, but we need to take off the rose-colored glasses and look internally, look at ourselves. The UN report says something very, very interesting, the issue of reconciliation.
Yeah, national reconciliation.
If you were to ask me, what is the largest, most significant, biggest hurdle we have towards peace, stability, economic, social, and political progress in Liberia, you would expect me to say education, or health care, or infrastructure. Those are all symptomatic of the problem. They are symptoms of the problem. I think the largest, most significant problem we have in our country is we are not a reconciled people. We are not a reconciled, unified people. Because we are not reconciled, we do not have a common focus, a common cause, a common destiny that we are all focusing on. As we move forward, there are all kinds of agendas. There's the corruption agenda, the impunity agenda, the ethnic agenda, the tribal agenda, the social agendas. So until we can become focused, until we can become reconciled and unified as a people, we're not going to get there. Now, if you ask me, I think there are 5 basic things that we need to do towards reconciliation. Education, healthcare, infrastructure, agriculture, and justice. And under justice is fairness, equity, and the issue of corruption. Okay? Now, what I'm trying to say to you is, the issue then becomes, what must we do to become reconciled? And we need to use those tools towards reconciliation. Let me give you an example. Education. In my humble opinion, there are 2 distinct parts of education. There's the academic, the philosophical, the curricular part of education. Teaching our children reading, writing, and arithmetic. Teaching our young people critical thinking skills. Teaching our people tolerance and good values. Okay, those are all the philosophical, academic side. But there's
that would be a recipe for reconciliation.
Wait a minute, and there's another part of education that I call infrastructure. Okay, classrooms, elementary schools, junior high schools, junior colleges, vocational schools, colleges, libraries, laboratories, computers. We need to make sure we place these things across Liberia in a way that every Liberian has equal access to the same thing. Then you are using education as a tool towards reconciliation. Okay, I have another idea. This idea of having national boarding schools in every county. For example, hypothetically, we say Lofa County. We're going to create a boarding school, a government boarding school in Lofa County. We're going to have 2,000 students. Okay, 1,400 of those 2,000 students must come from the other 14 counties, 100 each. So now of the 2,000 students, we've accounted for 1,400. 100 students must be those that are physically handicapped, that are physically handicapped, challenged, physically challenged. So now we have 1,500 of the, and they all go to that institution, that boarding school. What you have in that particular scenario is a microcosm of Liberia. So when you have a kid from Maryland County and a kid from Bapulu competing in that environment, the issue of being different goes away. Okay? The other thing that we need to do is we must have a compulsory community voluntary service for young people. Before you graduate from high school, you must do 3 months of community service. However, your community service must not be done in your community. If you're in Maryland County, go do your community service in Cape Mount. If you're in Cape Mount, do your community service in Grandeur. We mix our young people across the board. So when a young man, a young lady from Grand Cape Mount County is in a remote village in Sino, helping a young crew girl to dig a well and doing all this thing as a community project, and she stays in that particular environment for 3 months, they eventually get to a point and realize there ain't no difference between us. We are all Liberians. So then you are using education. There you go. You're using education as a tool to reconcile. We are not a reconciled people.
This sounds good. There are people who listen and watching. Say, oh, what Ambassador Barnes is saying is very good. But what assurance can you give them?
Look, the way...
Because they believe politicians only talk rhetoric. You know, they just say things, and when they are elected, they don't implement them.
Yeah, well, that's true. And many times, people go in there with good intentions. But there's an old expression, the road to somewhere is paved with good intention. You know what that place is. Considering I'm on radio, I won't say it. But that's true. But I think the way to implement these things, look, is to go to the community level. We need to focus, government needs to focus on our country, community by community. And I'll tell you what has driven me to that particular conclusion. The Ebola virus showed me and showed all of us the power of the community. Okay? We were only able to overcome Ebola when the communities led by their various leadership. And our communities in Liberia are pretty well organized. Lofa County was the first to show that particular power. But we have very well, every community in and around Monrovia, you go in there, there's a president, a vice president, a secretary general, a head of the women wing, a head of the youth wing. So they're all organized, okay? And that is a source of power. We need to work there. Okay. So the government must, and sometimes we are stuck in tradition. We need to take the paradigm of governance in our country and turn it on its ears.
Still on reconciliation. What is your view on the establishment of a war crimes court?
I feel that it should be done. It should be done with the proviso that it doesn't become a witch hunt.
Okay.
Okay. We must have a legal framework. Okay. And there must be clear evidence, that is unadulterated, that cannot be challenged, that these acts were done. And then then the appropriate consequences need to be addressed, and people need to pay for the bad choices they made.
Finally, 7 political institutions combined to form part of the NDC. Now we have only just 2. You've joined the NDC. I'm sure you're building your political alliance. What next? You'll be reaching out to all the political institutions.
We intend to, because you see, the ruling party has been in power for about 2 administrations now. So they're pretty well entrenched. Politically, they're pretty well entrenched. And we cannot afford to approach them in a splintered way. I take a shotgun approach. No. We need to consolidate and take a more rifle approach. Okay. Yes, pull forces together.
Okay.
Now you know the challenge there is, did you need to take a break?
No, we'll get the public participation.
Okay, the challenge here is this. I was at a group the other day, some friends of mine were sitting talking, and they said, Nat, you're too many. Why don't you all get in a room? All of y'all, Bronsky and we are and Uray and all of y'all. That's not going to happen. They said, why? I said, I'll tell you why. All of us, okay, there is not enough maturity. Our egos are big, and there's a certain amount of selfishness among us, okay, that we are we won't be able to get in a room and do that.
Everybody wants to be president.
What needs to happen? That decision needs to be made by the people. Let the people form their political pressure groups. Call all these people that are interested and say, ask them questions, engage them, encourage debates, and make determinations. If the parent group got together and said, okay, we have something at stake here, or communities got together and said, okay, we're going to invite Nathaniel Barnes. And Nathaniel Barnes goes there, and they peppered him with questions and tell us about it. And once they do that, and if they're not, then they can say, look, we are going to endorse this person. It's a clear message or signal to the others that, well, the elections haven't even started, the campaign hasn't even started, and I don't have the endorsement, a good mass of endorsement. Maybe I ought to start having second thoughts, okay? But it's not a decision that can be made by those that have ambition. It must be made by the people. After all, we are to be servants of the people.
Okay, very well. Ambassador Nathaniel Barnes, as you may be aware, has since joined the NDC. He says the NDC ideology, goals, and objectives are compatible with his vision for Liberia. We also talk about other critical national issues. Let's get your participation now. You can call us on 0863890790770 180939 to be a part on the program, news and discussion on Power TV and radio. 0770180939 0863890790770 180939 086389079. While we are with the calls, this should it be left along with okay, let's take our first caller. Good evening.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Pastor McKay. I'm from Oro.
Yes, go ahead.
I've listened to Mr. Barnes, and my attention has been drawn to the issue of boarding school. In a post-war country like this one, Boko Haram is wreaking havoc. The idea is good, but I'm just asking, what are the practical steps in terms of security of the people who will be on the boarding schools within the context of the proliferation of Islamic groups in West Africa, especially in the case of Boko Haram in Borno State, where it just got some students on the campus. What are the guarantees that President Barnes will practically ensure that people's case he wants to use in those boarding schools to reconcile the country will be saved from terrorists?
Okay. You listen to the
I heard the question, and I think one of the key responsibilities of government is to provide safety for its citizens, and that certainly is a factor that needs to be considered. But the truth of the matter is, we do have schools across the country, and thank God, so far we haven't had that problem. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't prepare for the problem.
Okay, let's take this other caller. Good evening. Hello. Caller, are you there? Okay, that caller went off the line. 0863890790770180939 are the numbers you can call to be a part of the program. Power Line on Power TV and radio. 0770180939 086 to come together and engage those who have. Okay, let's go back to the phone line. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, go ahead. You sound like Mr. Kimmeya.
Yes, Mr. Watson, I am.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, welcome to the guest.
Thank you, sir.
We have a problem. The proliferation of parties. This country is very small. I am worried that come 2017, many others, in fact, those who ran a jargon and called themselves Iron Lady, they have gone on the wayside because they are controlling the resources of the state. And they are doing it in a way like they are going to do it for themselves, not to balance the corridor. I want to realize today, wholesale roads leaving the interior from Calcutta, I said you could see flooded water, whenever women have to sell in a place and have bread.
Okay, Mr. Kimmeya, thank you. We don't have luxury of time. Let's take this other caller. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
But just in response to the gentleman, okay.
Okay, let's take this caller. Good evening. Good evening, caller. Hello, caller.
Hello, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. Go ahead. Your name and where you calling from?
Well, I'm Abraham Philip Calhoun.
Can
I'm
you
Abraham Philip Calhoun. I'm calling from in town right now.
go ahead? Go ahead.
contribution to what this program, Mr. Barnes, Honorable Barnes, I like his analysis and willpower, but I want to know what thought or what section within your analysis that happen to do with talent being resourced. Because in Liberia, we have a lot of stress in our arena politically because people are not mission centralized. The scope of function and operations in Liberia to develop talent and making a resource so that talent can contribute immensely back to government revenue. So,
okay, thank you very much. You respond to that. Let's take this other caller. Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead quickly.
Yeah, I'm AB Masale calling from Zimbabwe.
Saleh, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to ask what would be his intervention in the quote unquote bullying in Liberia. It's a form of terrorism, and
you say what? You say what?
The ritualistic killing.
Oh.
What about it? It's a terrorist act.
Okay,
So
thank you very much. Ritualistic kill. Let's take this other caller. Hello, good evening.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, go ahead. You live.
Yeah, Mohammed Kurban, the question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes, for the fine deliberations. I would love to know, because you talk about common goal, like we want to see ourselves as one goal in kind of doing everything together. And you have, like we all need to see ourselves as part of the society. And like not discriminate based on class, based on religion.
Okay, thank you. But the bounds, you can respond quickly before you focus
there
on
were so many questions now.
Yeah.
His issue is the matter of treating everybody equally. If you remember, I mentioned the 5 pillars, and the last one was justice, fairness, and equity. And he is absolutely right. Leaders must understand that they are servants, that they are employees of the people, and they need to treat those people with respect. Everyone needs to be treated with respect under the law. And one of the largest problems we have in Liberia is just people just doing things with impunity. You know, one of the pet peeves I have personally is the traffic situation. You're driving to work in the morning, following the law, going in your lane, and then some government big shot decides that they are so important that everybody else must get on the wayside and they can get on the oncoming lane and drive and go on about their business. That is wrong. Okay, and those kinds of things must stop. People must understand that regardless of one's ethnicity, one's religion, one's persuasion, whatever it may be, okay, he is equally protected under the law as everyone else. So I certainly agree with that. On the matter of the ritualistic killing, my own personal opinion about that is anyone caught doing that, and there's clear evidence and proof, they shouldn't be put in the jail. They should be put under the damn jail. That's wrong.
Okay, we're taking this final call and we conclude.
Hello?
Yes, you got to lower the volume of the radio, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, son.
Yeah, my question has to do with Mr. Brown. I just want to ask him, at the time being brought in a box with the police, why the people were interacting, including interfering in a question, and he sat alone. I leave for the people to know him what he in the country for.
Okay,
That's a good question. I wasn't campaigning.
Let's take the final caller, then you can respond and then you conclude. Okay, we're taking our final caller now. Time is not in our favor. Good evening, your final caller. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Rovan.
How are you, sir?
This is Joe Mara, and watching, sitting down and listening to you, and especially the issue of a reconciliation that has to do with students, through our various countries. And I think it is a good thing. But as Wasi was saying, sometimes you politicians get there, and now you forget about it. If you were to be elected tomorrow, with all those kind of things you are saying, would it be implemented?
Okay, thank you very much. Ambassador Barnes,
I will answer the question the gentleman asked before this one was, the issue of me being on the bus. When I went on the bus, I spent the last several years just listening. I've been in visiting people. I've ridden the bus, and I wasn't camping.
You were so silent.
I sat there and I listened because I wanted to observe and I wanted to learn. Okay, and it has been an incredible experience for me. I've been to communities and I say to folks, I said, I didn't come to ask you for anything. I didn't even come to tell you something. I just want to listen. What are your issues? What are your concerns? What are your fears? What are your joys? What are your aspirations? And I heard and gathered a lot of very valuable information. Okay, so, and I've learned. And that sort of segues into the last question the gentleman asked about my promising and politician promising and not delivering. I'm not promising. For example, the one thing I won't do, I won't go out there and make promises per se. I won't go out there and say, you vote for me, I'll build a road, I'll build a hospital. Because when you start to say that, if I went to Plibo and I made a promise to build a hospital in Plibo, and then I go to Compley and then I promise to build a hospital there, and I go to Greenville, eventually you start to lie. Because it's not possible to deliver all the promises. What I am saying, just 1 minute, what I'm saying is this. We are in trouble. We need to transition into development. I think, as a matter of fact, I'm confident that I know some of the answers. It will take all of us, it will take a reconciled, unified, all of us to solve the problems that we have. That is what I'm saying. I know how to lead, okay? I know how to motivate, and I have vision. And I'm saying, let's get together and do this.
Thank you very much for being a part on the program, News and Discussion. Well, that's how we want to leave you tonight on the program, News and Discussion. My guest has been Ambassador Nathaniel, former presidential candidate in the 2005 general, that's presidential and legislative election. This will be my guest on the program, News and Discussion. Don't forget to join in at 9 o'clock for